Welcome everyone to Netaji Subhash Open University. Friends, we are discussing on the goods and services tax rules procedures, and today in this session we will be discussing on the assessment process, interest applicability, penalties, prosecution and the procedural aspect for that. Friends, whenever there is a law, there are certain stringent provisions are also there in the law towards the end of it, which says that if a person who is not obeying to the procedure or the practice or the rule or making breaking the rules and making profit for him or herself, then there should be certain amount of interest, there should be certain amount of penalties, and this is basically to ensure that the uninterrupted flow of the transaction continues, the taxation module continues, because ultimately the objective is to reach the make the benefits make available to the end consumer. So under GST law, we speak about, first we start with assessment, and then we'll immediately shift to the applicability of the interest, and then obviously on penalties followed by the prosecutions. These are all there in this particular law. You may recall that in the return filing chapter, we discussed about filing of return and the procedures thereof. And therein whatever we told, that the returns need to be filed, every month's total liability ledger to be filed by 10th of the next month, the input tax credit by 15th of the next month, net liability, net payment to the government account by 20th of the next month, right? So everything was covered on a month to month basis, and there is an annual return. The annual return ultimately reconcile my total sales or supply with my turnover reported in my books of accounts. So proper reconciliation is also there. If there may be a possibility that whatever tax I have shown and whatever the tax liability arises as per the government mechanism, there may come out certain differences because of so many reasons. Because I considered myself as a pure agent in lot many places, the department may come out and say that you are not a pure agent, hence you are liable for the gross amount, wherein I have paid the taxes or as a net amount. So difference of opinion may take place. I consider a particular product or goods or service under a particular category, a particular HSN. The government says it is not that HSN, it is the other HSN which having a higher amount of tax rate. I considered a tax rate of 5%, government says no 5%, your applicable tax rate is 18% or 24%. So the assessment process may be, one is called the self-assessment by the taxpayer himself, who self-determine how much is the self-assessment, and by the tax authorities also, who determine by scrutiny the details of the ledger how much should be the liability. And if it is by the assessment by the tax authority, it may start with a provisional assessment, where provisionally you get a comfort that whatsoever you have placed is actually accepted. The second one becomes a summary assessment. That means if it is a small or the small scale business activities, you may just go through a summary assessment, and if your input tax credit, there is no departure whatsoever available in the GST 2, actually you have claimed that much only, no question of further discussion. But if there are number of departures, number of anomalies, number of legal confusion or confrontation of the opinions, a scrutiny assessment would take place. And obviously the assessing authority will have their own right to go for a best judgment assessment if they doesn't get any data from you, you means a registered person, then they may go for a best judgment assessment. So, in short, self-assessment by the registered person directly assessing what is my gross liability, what is my input tax credit, what is the net liability, pay it off, file the return, GSTR 1, 2 and 3, annual return 9, chapter closed, called as self-assessment. Provisional assessment, it's only a provisionally, but it comes to the main area of scrutiny of the returns. In that case, in case of there is an explanation not received, certain explanation that why you considered these goods or services under a particular tax rate, wherein you are actually liable to tax or at a higher rate, if there are proper justification, ramification, then very much it could be settled at the assessment stage itself. If it is satisfactory, no further action. If it is not satisfactory, the government authority may go for a inspection, search or seizure. They may go for a proceedings for demand and recovery of the taxes through the adjudication process. And if they find that the accounts is made in such a complicated manner that they are not able to get the desired result of what is the net tax liability, they may call for a chartered accountant or a cost accountant to carry out a detailed audit, a scrutiny audit, investigation audit for that particular books of accounts to determine what is the exact amount of tax liability. This is the entire process that's being notified in the law itself. It starts just to, in a nutshell, the assessment process definitely starts with the filing of the returns and the electronic cash ledger, electronic liability ledger, knocking off all these things, GSTR 3B filing, and then if everything is okay, process or proceedings get closed. Otherwise, a show cause notice being issued or would be issued. Show cause notice definitely will provide the explanation calling for that why your tax liability is reduced, why you have adopted a different method than the commonly accepted method, what is the reasons for your determining this particular tax liability, etc. And if the explanation of the show causes are perfect, no further assessment, no further details, no further adjudication would be taken place. But if it is not complied, or either it is not complied, or proper documentations are not given, or whatever has been given, the assessing officer is not satisfied with that to justify that this is not taxable, the assessing officer may confirm the demand, and if nothing has been provided, it is up to them. They can always go for a best judgment assessment. Let's understand what about the interest. Every month 3B, that means your net liability to be knocked off and paid by 20th of the next month. Very correct. You have not paid, or you have made a delay in payment, or you have paid say X amount, actually found out you are liable for pay X plus 2 amount, means something extra. You have suppressed certain tax amount, you have not paid the tax as demanded or as per the provision of the law. Then obviously on the differential amount, to the extent you have not paid taxes, you are definitely exposed for interest, because you have not paid or delayed paid or part paid the government dues. If that is the situation, my friends, then obviously the interest is applicable on the amount from the date it is due to the date you have actually paid. Government from time to time, at least for the initial few days, given certain exemption, telling that it is a new law, interest may be waived out in certain circumstances where exact amount of taxes has properly been paid. But it is a statutory agenda wherein you need to be very careful to understand that if a default takes place, then it has to be levied with the interest as applicable, whether 18% or 24% depending on the situation, or as may be notified from time to time. Once interest is also covered, now comes to the most dangerous part of it. It's called as penalty followed by prosecution. And what section 122 speaks about, that there are around 21 situations or 23 situations wherein a person can be treated or the supplier can be treated as an assessee in default and penalty would be levied thereon. Correct? What may be the situation? Number one is availing input tax credit without actual receipt of goods. You have not received the goods, but you have input tax credit, you have availed. You have availed input tax credit based on a fake, false, incorrect invoice, which is actually not properly issued. Fraudulently obtaining in any refund. Any amount of furnishing a false information, fake information, financial records is not properly made with an intention to evade the taxes. Failure to register the, despite you are eligible, you are mandatorily required to register, you have not registered yourself under the GST law. Furnishing false information regarding your registration, particulars, etc. Transporting goods without prescribed documents. That means you are transporting the goods without a proper waybill or a proper invoice. Or suppressing the turnover, you are suppressing the turnover with an objective to reduce the tax liability, with the purpose of or the intention to reduce the tax liability. You have quoted an incorrect GSTN number of another person. It's like your invoice, you are liable to pay tax, you have used somebody else's GSTN number, right? Or you have attempted to tamper or destroy any of the material evidences when it has been called for. You have been called for providing last 5 years books of accounts and others, and you try to tamper that. Availing or distributing input tax credit by the tax as the input tax distributor, not in line with, not in a proper manner of the tax liability, but in contravention of the act and the rules. So, in any of the situation, if you are engaged, you are identified that you have engaged in any of these cases, then a penalty would be levied. What is the amount of penalty? The law says the amount of tax evaded or fraudulently obtained a refund or availing a credit incorrectly, right? Then that particular amount, say I have evaded or incorrectly availed input tax credit to the extent of say 50,000 rupees. So I will be liable to pay penalty on equal amount of 50,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees the tax and 50,000 rupees of penalty. Here it says if the amount is small, say around 5,000 rupees, then the law says or 10,000. That means my default is say 5,000 or 7,000 rupees, then I need to pay penalty of flat 10,000. If the amount of default is more than 10,000, then I need to pay that higher amount to the extent I made the default. There are specific penalty also. This is a general penalty. There are specific penalties also, which is imposed on any person who has not paid tax or makes a short payment of taxes in respect of supplies, right? And that specific penalty is 10% of tax paid, right? Tax which has not paid or short paid or rupees 10,000 rupees. So if I have willfully not paid or short paid or erroneously I took a refund, then I need to pay 10% as against a penalty. So one is a general penalty, then one is a specific penalty, and all these penalties, there are situations that penalty, if the returns are properly not filed, these penalties are all very specific. One is the general one is a specific one for the purposes, and the third one comes out if the penalty for failure for non-furnishing of the returns. You have not filed the return. Every month you need to file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and then 9 in the year end. You have not filed, and in that case per day 100 rupees for each default continuing, not exceeding 1000 rupees you need to pay. So there is a detailed penalty provisions are given. People are not in a position to escape out from that. Beyond the penalties, just to have an idea, there are punishment, there are prosecutions. And the prosecution, just for a glimpse to share with you, if the tax evaded exceeded 5 crore or a repeating offenders, repeatedly you are offending, then it is a 3 years imprisonment, jail, right, and with a fine, and that becomes very, very challenging. Tax evaded between 2 crores to 5 crores, you are liable for 1 year imprisonment and also fine. And the tax evaded between 1 crore to 2 crore, then it is 6 months and then also with a fine. So these are the punishments, these are the prosecutions, jail, sentencement, all these things are there in the GST law, and we have to be very careful in dealing, because the GST law is very simple to understand and made very, very user friendly, but at the same time, if the people are not following the rules and procedures, right, making a default and not paying the taxes properly, penalties are very stringent, prosecutions are also very stringent. Thank you, my friends.